When we talk about change, real, meaningful, lasting change, we often imagine massive overhauls, quitting a job, moving to a new city, going back to school. We assume that transformation requires big, bold leaps. But in reality, the most profound changes in our lives don't start with dramatic moves. They start with something far simpler, small, consistent actions. 1 hour a day, that's it. 1 hour of intention, repeated every day, is often all it takes to completely alter the trajectory of your life. And what's so powerful about this is that it's accessible to all of us. No matter where you are, no matter your background, resources, or schedule, an hour is something we can carve out. And when we do, it becomes the most valuable hour of our day. Think about it this way: when you give yourself an hour a day, not to scroll, not to react, but to invest in yourself, you begin to build something remarkable. Whether it's reading, writing, exercising, learning a new language, or reflecting on your goals, that hour becomes a signal to yourself that you matter, that your growth matters. You're telling your mind, this time is sacred, and that signal adds up. It starts to rewire how you see your own potential. This is where consistency becomes your superpower, because it's not what you do occasionally that transforms your life. It's what you do daily. 1 hour of focus each day turns into 7 hours a week, over 30 hours a month, and more than 365 hours a year. That's over 9 full work weeks just by showing up for yourself daily. Think about how many people say they don't have time to learn a new skill or pursue a passion. But over 9 full work weeks is enough time to write a book. It's enough time to learn to code, to train for a marathon, or to pick up a new language. It's enough time to completely reshape your habits, mindset, and direction. I've seen this in my own life and in the lives of the people I work with. The most impactful leaders I've met aren't those who wait for inspiration to strike. They're the ones who commit, quietly, daily, without fanfare, to getting a little better every day. That kind of commitment doesn't require a title or a platform. It just requires choosing to show up. That's what 1 hour a day gives you: a structure, a rhythm, and over time, a new identity. You go from someone who wants to change to someone who is changing every single day. And what's more, that hour a day doesn't just change you, it changes how you engage with the world. When you begin to operate from a place of growth, of presence, of discipline, it influences how you show up for your family, your team, your community. You lead differently, you listen more closely, you become more resilient when challenges arise, because you've trained your mind to push through resistance in the quiet moments of personal effort. That 1 hour becomes a kind of daily training, mental, emotional, even spiritual. It's the edge that compounds and becomes character. Now, some people hear this and say, "But I'm not disciplined enough." But discipline isn't something you're born with. It's something you build, and it starts small. 1 hour is manageable. You don't have to change everything overnight. You just need to choose one thing that matters and stick with it, even on the days when you're tired, even when motivation fades, especially then, because that's when the real change begins, not when it's easy, but when you push through despite the resistance. If there's one thing I hope you take from this, it's this: your future isn't waiting for some perfect moment to begin. It's being shaped right now in the small choices you make daily. 1 hour a day, that's the doorway. And once you walk through it day after day, you start to see change doesn't require more time, it requires more intention. The transformation you're looking for is already within your reach. There's something profoundly liberating about realizing that we don't need to overhaul our entire lives to create meaningful change. Often we wait for the big break, the perfect opportunity, or the right moment to take action. But real progress faltering, momentum-building progress, often begins with the smallest steps. Just 1 hour a day. That's not a sacrifice, it's an investment. And like any investment, the key isn't how much you start with, but how consistently you add to it. The principle is simple. Small, deliberate efforts made consistently produce extraordinary returns. We see this in every system that works. Financial investing is an obvious example. Compound interest rewards patience and persistence. But this principle applies even more powerfully to how we invest in ourselves. 1 hour spent learning, reflecting, building, or creating may not look like much in the moment. But stack those hours over time and you begin to see compounding growth, not just in skills, but in mindset, confidence, and capability. When you look at the most effective, impactful people, their success is rarely the result of some grand overnight transformation. It's the outcome of tiny investments made every single day. 1 hour of reading each day doesn't just make you more knowledgeable. It reshapes how you think, how you solve problems, and how you relate to the world around you. 1 hour of exercise each day doesn't just make you fitter. It builds discipline, mental clarity, and emotional resilience. That's the power of small actions. They create ripples far beyond the immediate task. There's a mindset shift that happens when we begin to see our time as capital and ourselves as the most important asset we can invest in. The hour we spend aimlessly scrolling or mindlessly reacting can be repurposed into something intentional, something that builds toward the future we want. When we start doing that, we stop being passive consumers of our lives and start becoming active architects of them. That shift is everything, and here's the thing, we're not just talking about adding more to our plates, we're talking about being more deliberate with the time we already have. We all live busy lives, filled with obligations and distractions. But within that noise, there is almost always a quiet pocket of time. An hour we can reclaim. It may mean getting up earlier. It may mean turning off the notifications for a while. But that hour, once claimed, becomes a sanctuary, a place where growth begins, and the returns show up not just in what you accomplish, but in who you become. The person who shows up for themselves every day begins to carry that energy into every part of their life. Relationships deepen because you're more present. Work becomes more purposeful because you've trained yourself to focus and grow. The time you invest in yourself starts to elevate everything around you. That's the multiplier effect of personal growth. It doesn't stay contained. This isn't about perfection either. It's not about squeezing every drop of productivity out of each day. It's about recognizing the value of consistency and direction. If you use your hour with intention, even imperfectly, you're already winning. Because most people never start. Most people are waiting for clarity before they act, not realizing that clarity often comes through action. There's incredible power in simply beginning. The first few days, maybe it feels like progress is slow. But just like any investment, the most meaningful gains aren't immediate, they're exponential. A single hour won't change your life tomorrow, but stack that hour again and again, and in 6 months you won't recognize the person you were when you started. And in a world that moves fast, that craves instant results, 1 hour a day becomes a quiet act of rebellion. A vote for the long term, a vote for depth over distraction, When we show up for that hour each day, we're saying, I believe that who I'm becoming matters more than what I can check off today. That's a powerful mindset, and it's one that ripples far beyond ourselves. So when you think about how to create lasting change, don't look for dramatic shifts or sweeping resolutions. Look for the small, consistent ways you can invest in yourself, day by day, hour by hour. The return on that investment is exponential, and it begins the moment you decide to begin. Time is the one resource we all have in equal measure. No matter our background, our role, or our responsibilities, we each get 24 hours in a day. What sets people apart isn't how much time they have, but how they choose to use it. And when we start dedicating just 1 hour a day to something intentional, something that stretches us, grounds us, or brings us closer to our purpose, that hour becomes so much more than just a block of time. It becomes a compass. It begins to orient us, and over time it creates a deep sense of clarity and purpose. We live in a world of constant motion. Notifications, meetings, emails, headlines, we're pulled in 100 directions before the day even begins. It's easy to become reactive, to let our days be shaped by urgency rather than intention. But 1 hour a day changes that. It's a deliberate pause, a moment where we're not reacting to the world, but reconnecting with ourselves. It becomes a foundation for every other decision we make. That hour isn't about checking another box. It's about stepping out of the noise and asking, what actually matters? When you give yourself time to reflect, to learn, or to simply focus without distraction, you begin to notice what aligns with your values and what doesn't. You begin to see patterns in your thinking, recognize the moments that drain your energy, and rediscover the ones that light you up. It's that clarity that allows us to make better choices, not just for ourselves, but for those we lead and serve. Purpose isn't something you stumble upon. It's something you cultivate, and one of the most effective ways to do that is to carve out space for it to grow. When we spend time in reflection or growth consistently, without waiting for perfect conditions, we build a stronger internal compass. We stop chasing every new trend or reacting to every challenge with urgency, and instead start responding from a place of groundedness. That kind of intentionality creates momentum in the direction that truly matters. And it's not just about the big questions. Sometimes it's about gaining clarity on the small ones. How do I want to show up today? What energy am I bringing into this meeting, this relationship, this decision? That kind of self-awareness doesn't happen by accident. It's the result of taking the time to slow down and tune in. And when we do that regularly, we become more thoughtful, more creative, and more impactful in everything we do. There's also a certain power in knowing that you are the one shaping your day, not the other way around. When we claim that hour, when we say this time is for growth, not reaction, we reclaim a sense of agency. And in a world where so much feels uncertain, that sense of control is not only empowering, it's essential. It reminds us that we're not just passengers in our own lives. We're driving, we're choosing. What's remarkable is how this clarity begins to influence others. When people see you operating from purpose, not rushing, not scattered, but clear and calm, it inspires them to do the same. That 1 hour a day becomes not just a personal habit, but a cultural shift. It raises the standard. It invites others to be more intentional with their own time, their own choices, and let's be honest, it's easy to say we'll find time when things calm down, when the next project ends, or when the schedule opens up. But life rarely slows down on its own. That's why the most important time to build this practice is when things are busy. Because that's when we need clarity the most. Not when everything is smooth, but when things are messy. That's when that 1 hour becomes the anchor in the storm. Over time, this practice isn't just about what you do in the hour. It's about who you become because of it. You start noticing how your energy shifts, how your decision-making sharpens, how your priorities realign, and most importantly, how your life begins to reflect what matters most to you. Not just in theory, but in action. We often underestimate the impact of one focused hour, but done with intention, it can realign your values, refocus your goals, and redefine your sense of purpose. It's not a luxury. It's not something to squeeze in when there's extra time. It's the most strategic hour of your day. And it starts with a simple decision: to slow down, tune in, and choose what matters most. One of the most common misconceptions about personal growth is that it requires some special starting point. That before we begin to change, we need the perfect routine, the ideal schedule, or access to exclusive resources. But the truth is, you don't need any of that. You don't need to be in peak condition, have everything figured out, or even know exactly where you're headed. All you need is the willingness to start. 1 hour a day, that's all it takes to shift the direction of your life. And the most powerful thing about this idea is that it's available to everyone. There's a kind of false narrative out there that change is for the lucky few, those with extra time, fewer responsibilities, or more natural discipline. But the people who make the most meaningful progress aren't the ones with the most resources. They're the ones who simply decide to begin right where they are, with what they have. They choose to show up for themselves consistently, imperfectly, but with intention. It's easy to convince ourselves that we're not ready, that we're too busy, too tired, too far behind, but growth doesn't ask for perfection, it only asks for presence. And when you make the decision to give just 1 hour of your day to something that feeds your mind, strengthens your body, or nurtures your purpose, you start to build a new rhythm, one that slowly but surely begins to change the story you're telling yourself. We all have constraints. Some of us are balancing families, careers, health challenges, or financial stress. But within all of that, there is still a sliver of time we can reclaim. And when we do, we're sending a powerful message to ourselves that we are worth investing in, that even if the rest of the day is consumed by demands and obligations, this 1 hour is ours. That mindset begins to change how we move through the rest of the day. We feel more grounded, more empowered, and more capable, not because our circumstances changed, but because we did. And here's what's important to remember. This is not about adding pressure. It's not about turning every moment into a productivity exercise. It's about creating space to grow, to learn, to reflect, to create. It might be an hour spent reading something that challenges you, or time spent walking, thinking, or simply being quiet in a noisy world. It might be focused work on a project you've been putting off for too long. Whatever it is, it's yours. That time becomes sacred not because of how perfect it looks, but because of the intention behind it. There is no ideal condition for starting. Life is always going to be messy, unpredictable, and unfinished. But if you wait for the perfect moment, you may be waiting forever. The most meaningful habits are built in the middle of real life, with all its interruptions and imperfections. And in that sense, the very act of carving out that hour becomes an act of leadership. Not leadership in the traditional sense, but the kind that begins with leading yourself, choosing growth when it would be easier to stay still, choosing purpose when distraction is everywhere. We also have to let go of this idea that it's too late. No matter your age or stage, you're not behind. There's no deadline for transformation. You haven't missed your chance. Every day offers you the opportunity to begin again, and that's exactly what 1 hour a day allows you to do. It lets you reset, recommit, realign, and the beauty is, every single one of us has that power regardless of where we're starting from. When we understand this, we also start to realize that we're not competing with anyone else. The only comparison that matters is who you were yesterday and who you're becoming today. That hour becomes a quiet, powerful space to grow into the person you want to be. Not for anyone else's approval, not to meet some external standard, but because you believe in your own capacity to evolve. And that belief, that choice to begin, is what sets things in motion. It's not about talent or timing or luck. It's about showing up every day for 1 hour and letting that simple act create a ripple that expands over time. You don't need permission. You don't need the perfect plan. You just need to decide that 1 hour a day is worth it. Because in the end, it's not about how far you've come or how fast you move. It's about the quiet courage to begin, right here, right now, with what you already have.